I cannot understand how, in the advanced 21st century, there are still families that discriminate and favor sons over daughters. And I am a victim of being considered the black sheep in my own family. Is there anyone out there in a similar situation to mine? I, Sarah Jenkins, am 30 years old. When I pursued architecture after graduating from university with excellent results, my mother, Mrs. Jenkins, told everyone it was just a temporary hobby. Meanwhile, Robert, my less capable older brother, was cheered on by the whole family for his failed real estate projects. I rarely attended family gatherings, especially after I refused to send money to bail Robert out of his third contract violation lawsuit. From a young age, my life was a series of unfair comparisons and judgments. When I was in elementary school, I was always the child who loved to read, spending hours in the library instead of running around outside like other kids. My parents, Meister and Mrs. Jenkins, would often sigh and say I was too quiet, not sociable enough. Meanwhile, Robert, my brother, despite his mediocre grades and frequent troubles, was always celebrated by them. Every time Robert brought home a poor average grade, my mother would pat his head and say, "My son is energetic. What matters is that he's happy." As for me, if I brought home an A, my mother would just glance at it and say, "Oh, this girl is always burying her head in books. Who will marry her if she keeps this up?" Family dinners were a torment. I often sat silently listening to my parents and Robert talk about his grand projects, even though I knew they were just fanciful ideas that would go nowhere. Robert had a habit of mocking everything I did. When I participated in a school science fair and won first prize with my sustainable city model, he sneered, "A city on paper who would want to live in that concrete mess?" My parents just laughed along, not a word in my defense. At that time, I was just a small girl with oversized glasses standing alone next to my winning ribbon, and even though no one applauded, I still smiled. Even then, I knew how to celebrate myself. That little girl didn't need a crowd. She just needed someone to believe in her. And eventually, she became that person. When I pursued architecture after graduating from university with excellent results, my mother, Mrs. Jenkins, told everyone it was just a temporary hobby. She even called me cold calculating and career obsessed just because I didn't try to please everyone with fake smiles. Meanwhile, Robert, my less capable older brother, was cheered on by the whole family for his failed real estate projects. I rarely attended family gatherings, especially after I refused to send money to bail Robert out of his third contract violation lawsuit. I chose to remain silent and build my own career, slowly climbing each ladder without needing any recognition from them. One day, I received news that Robert had to go to court for a major fraud lawsuit involving a condominium project he had sold to many people without a building permit. I went to court, sat in the last row, uninvited, just to observe. I watched my mother clutch her purse, whispering something about how everything would be all right, while Robert sat there pretending to be innocent. I, now a renowned architect with acclaimed urban regeneration projects, had no intention of speaking a word. I just came to watch them, the same people who called me dramatic, ungrateful, and visible. The judge, Judge Davies, walked in, a stern, middle-aged man. He skimmed through the file, then his eyes landed on me. He squinted, then whispered loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Wait, Chief Architect Sarah Jenkins." The entire room fell silent. Robert's lawyer stammered, the court clerk dropped his pen. My mother went pale. I didn't stand or smile, I just nodded once. Judge Davies immediately straightened his posture. "This case will no longer be handled the way this family expected," he said, "because the person they labeled a failure, the one they never invited, never supported, never respected, was the most influential person in the room." Their silence now was no longer passive, it was fear. The air in the courtroom changed sharp electric as if everyone had just realized they were standing too close to lightning. The judge announced a brief recess. He walked over to me, taking off his glasses. Architect Jenkins, I had no idea. If I had known, I gently stopped him. I'm not here in any official capacity, I'm just observing. He nodded, understanding that this case was now a career liability for him. News began to spread. Reporters swarmed the hallway. My mother couldn't answer when asked if that was Sarah Jenkins, the famous architect. I sat there quiet and unapologetic. I didn't come to flex power. I came to remind them I am power. When the hearing resumed, the atmosphere was different now. Not a soul could look me in the eye. Judge Davies, more cautious, announced, "This case is being reassigned, effective immediately. I will not be proceeding further. Conflict of interest." He didn't want to be involved in a case attached to my name. Robert finally spoke. "Sarah, please." I turned to him slowly. "Now you remember my name?" I stood up. I didn't storm out or gloat. I just turned to the bailiff and said, "I'm done observing," and walked straight down the aisle. Every pair of eyes followed me, including the ones that once looked away when I needed them most. Because when you've spent a lifetime underestimated, you don't have to slam the door when you leave. You become the building. Outside the courtroom, the press was waiting. They didn't know why I was there. Not yet. But someone had tipped them off that Chief Architect Sarah Jenkins had been seen at a fraud trial. Microphones, flashes, a whirlwind of questions. I didn't flinch. I looked one reporter square in the eyes and said calmly, "I was attending as a private citizen, no further comment." And I walked straight through the crowd, through the cameras, through the noise, just like I always had. Because when you've spent your life being talked over, you learn to move with purpose, not permission. Back in the car, my phone lit up with missed calls from my mother and Robert. I didn't pick up. Instead, I turned to my driver. "Take me to the state office." I had an important meeting to lead on urban planning reform, a system my mother once said I wasn't realistic enough to understand. That night alone in my apartment, I finally opened Robert's text. "Sarah, I'm sorry. You could have helped me. You could have warned me." I replied, "You had their protection. I had their silence. You were raised to believe the world owed you grace. I was raised to believe I owed it to everyone else. Now we're both grown adults. And this time, I chose me. Delivered, read, no response. The silence tasted better than any apology they could offer, because this time, I wasn't the forgotten sister in the back row. I was the headline, the one who outgrew their story and started writing her own. The next morning, headlines hit every feed. Architect Sarah Jenkins attends brother's trial. Legal system shaken. Family drama at the bench. They didn't have the full story, but one photo said it all. Me standing quietly in the courtroom aisle, my mother frozen in shock, Robert turning toward me mid-plea. That single image went viral, and suddenly people started asking the real question, what kind of family ignores their daughter until the world doesn't? I didn't say a word publicly. I let the media speculate. I let my family sweat. Because silence had always been their weapon. Now it was mine. That afternoon, my mother called, her voice brittle. "Sarah, I didn't know how far you'd come. Robert's in real trouble. They're talking about revoking his license permanently. You could help. Just say something." I looked out my office window at the Capitol lawn below. "You called me a failure for years, and now that I succeeded without your support, you want me to erase the consequences of your favorite's choices." My mother whispered, "He's your brother." "No," I said gently. "He was your golden boy. Now he's just an adult with a record." Then I ended the call. No yelling, no grand declaration, just truth. Because for years I begged them to see me, and when they refused, I became someone they couldn't look away from. Later that night, I received an email from Judge Davies himself. He explained the new handling judge had no intention of leniency. He thanked me for maintaining neutrality and closed with, "What your presence did in that room will be studied in law schools. Not because of what you said, but because of how many people finally listened." And for the first time, I believed it. My silence was louder than all their years of noise. By the end of the week, Robert's sentence was finalized, license revoked, probation assigned, fines stacked so high his lawyer started asking for character witnesses. That's when they called in favors. My aunt called first. "Sarah, sweetheart, your mother is devastated. Robert is humiliated. Isn't that enough?" "Enough?" I asked. Was it enough when they whispered behind my back at every holiday dinner when I got into grad school, and Mom told everyone it was just a phase when they called me cold, calculating, and career obsessed because I wasn't smiling for their applause, no, aunt? This wasn't about humiliation, it was about accountability. Robert didn't just have a fraud problem. He had an entitlement problem fueled by a family who never held him to the same standard they buried me beneath. Now that standard has a name, a title, and power that doesn't beg for validation. That night, I sat with my chief of staff reviewing policy briefs. Midway through, she looked at me and said, "Architect Jenkins, are you okay?" I paused because yes, I was okay. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting to be seen. I was watching the same people who told me I'd never be anything suddenly whisper my name with caution. I closed my laptop and answered, "I'm more than okay. I'm free." And I meant it. Because freedom wasn't the power I gained from my position. It was the moment I realized I never had to go back to beg for love from people who only valued control. Robert was learning now that a last name doesn't protect you from consequences, that the quiet one they dismissed became the one who signs the laws. That courtroom never called me again, but the city council did, asking if I'd speak on ethical leadership. And the photo of me at the trial now framed in my office, a reminder that no matter how far they tried to bury me, I didn't just rise. I made the ground beneath them shake. A month later, I hosted a policy summit in D.C., senators, governors, federal judges, even international observers all gathered. I stood at the podium flawless and Navy notes untouched because the story I carried didn't need a script. I spoke about systemic privilege, about accountability, about how consequences don't discriminate, but people do. I didn't name names, but those who'd read the headlines knew exactly who I was referencing, and those who hadn't felt it anyway. Afterward, I mingled politely, posed for photos, shook hands until a soft voice stopped me from behind. "Architect Jenkins." I turned. It was Judge Davies. He extended his hand. "May I say what you did that day? You didn't say a word, and somehow you still taught us all something." I smiled. "Silence," I said, "is a language. You just have to decide who deserves to understand it." He chuckled, nodded, walked away, and I stood there letting the weight of that moment settle into my bones. Because years ago, I would have given anything for my family to clap for me. Now, I didn't need applause. I had peace. Then, something unexpected happened. The summit coordinator handed me a note. "There's someone waiting downstairs. Says it's personal." I raised an eyebrow, but I already knew. I walked past marble columns out into the golden dusk, and there he was, Robert. No suit hair disheveled. For once, no performance. He stepped forward cautiously, clutching a manila envelope. "I'm not here to beg," he said. "I just wanted to say thank you for not ruining me. You could have destroyed everything." I tilted my head. "You were already doing that." He looked down. "I'm getting help. I'm trying." I didn't hug him, didn't comfort him, but I didn't turn away either. Instead, I said, "Then don't try for me. Try for the person you become when no one's watching. That's who matters now." He nodded, eyes glossy, and handed me the envelope, old photos from when we were little before it all got complicated. Then he walked off, and I stood in front of the Capitol steps, envelope in hand, realizing something powerful. My story didn't need revenge, it needed clarity. They didn't break me. They built the exact kind of fire I'd one day lead with. Back home, I placed the envelope on my kitchen counter. I didn't rush to open it, just watched it like it might still bite. That night, I sat by the window with chamomile tea. No guards, no cameras, no headlines, just me. And finally, I opened it. Inside were moments frozen in time, Robert and I as kids laughing in the backyard sprinkler. Dad grilling, Mom pretending to care. One photo of me in oversized glasses holding a science fair ribbon standing alone. No one was clapping, not even them. And still, I was smiling. Even back then, I knew how to celebrate myself. That little girl didn't need a crowd. She just needed someone to believe in her, and eventually she became that person. I stood up and framed that science fair photo right next to my framed inauguration one. Two girls staring back at me, one invisible, one undeniable, and both me. The next morning, I declined a call from my mother, then blocked it. Not out of anger, but because healing isn't about revenge. It's about choosing who still gets access to your peace. Robert's story wasn't mine to clean up, and my silence wasn't punishment. It was closure, because the woman they called the black sheep built housing for the homeless. The girl they called dramatic wrote laws that protected children from abuse. The daughter they called a failure became a leader the city now looked to in crisis. They wrote me out of the family. So I wrote myself into history, not with a scream, not with a crown, but with quiet, focused power and a reminder to every forgotten daughter, you don't need their seat at the table. When the time comes, you build the table.